You are watching this video right now, and it was not by accident. It wasn't the algorithm. It wasn't a coincidence. There is something much greater behind this moment, and in the next few minutes you will understand exactly what is happening in your life, why certain things are not moving forward, and what God is trying to tell you right now as you watch this. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to reveal here will reorganize what you think about faith, about blocks, and about your destiny. Thousands of people have reported that this message arrived at the exact moment they needed it. Now it's your turn. You are over 35 years old. You've lived through a lot. You've believed, you've waited, you've prayed, but there is a feeling that won't go away, the feeling that something is stuck. You work, you strive, you ask God, and yet it feels like there is an invisible wall separating you from where you should be, in your relationships, in your finances, in your health, in your inner peace. This wall has a name, and today you are going to discover its name. But before we continue, do me a favor right now, like this video. This simple gesture helps this message reach more people who are going through the same thing as you. And subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell. Because what we share here isn't entertainment, it's revelation. Let's start at the root of the problem. You know that feeling of waking up tired even after sleeping 8 hours? Of smiling in front of others but feeling a huge weight inside? Of looking at your own life and asking yourself in silence, why does everything seem so hard for me? Have you ever caught yourself asking this question in the middle of the night, when the house is quiet and no one is watching? This is not weakness. This is a sign. A sign that something needs to change at a layer that goes far beyond what the eyes can see. Science calls this chronic purpose burnout. Researchers at Stanford University have published studies showing that more than 60% of Americans over the age of 35 report feeling that their lives do not correspond to what they imagined they would have built by now. 60%, more than half. This is not an isolated case. This is a silent epidemic of people who are living on autopilot, fulfilling obligations, paying bills, but feeling that there is a greater version of themselves that never manifested. And spirituality confirms what science is discovering now. Because this feeling of being stuck is not just psychological, it is spiritual, and it has a very specific cause that most people were never taught to identify. There is a biblical concept that very few people truly understand, and it is exactly this concept that explains why many prayers seem unheard, why many fasts bring no results, why many faithful, dedicated, God-fearing people continue to live below what God promised. This concept is that of the double-minded man. James 1:8 clearly says, "A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." But what does it mean to be double-minded in practice, in real life, in the life of an average 35-plus American who works, has a family, and has faith? It means this: you ask God in the morning and doubt in the afternoon. You declare prosperity with your mouth and believe in scarcity with your heart. You pray for healing, but continue to identify yourself with the disease. You ask for restoration in your marriage, but carry a grudge held for years. This internal contradiction is what modern science calls cognitive dissonance, and it is what the Bible calls double-mindedness. And as long as this contradiction exists, there is a block in the flow of blessings, not because God has abandoned you, but because you have not yet learned to align yourself completely with what God has already prepared. This is what is happening to you, and this has a solution. Before I continue and reveal exactly how to break this block, I need to tell you something important. Everything you are hearing now is not theory. It is the fruit of years of study, of observing the real lives of people who transformed impossible situations into powerful testimonies. And there is a practical path, a path that combines living faith with concrete action. That is why the Father prepared the sacred book for you, the 21 Days of Prosperity and Alignment with God. This sacred book is not just a reading. It is a 21-day process designed to dismantle, layer by layer, exactly the blocks that stall the blessings in your life. Each day brings a declaration, a biblical truth, and a specific action to reprogram not only what you think, but what you believe in the depths of your heart. The link is in the first comment of the channel pinned at the top. Access it now. Because this content has already bothered many people, they have already tried to silence this message, and access could change at any moment. comment below right now, "I am chosen and I will download the digital book." This comment is your act of faith. It is you telling heaven that you are ready for the next level. Now that you have decided to act, the next truth I'm going to tell you will be the final blow against the greatest invisible enemy that has been operating in your life for years without you noticing. Let us continue. There is an enemy that does not appear in the form of a declared problem. He doesn't arrive with the face of adversity. He disguises himself as normality. He hides in habits, in everyday conversations, in the way you see yourself in the mirror, in the story you tell about yourself when no one is listening. This enemy is called limited identity, and it is more dangerous than any external situation you have ever faced, because external situations pass. But the identity you carry inside you shapes every decision, every relationship, every opportunity you accept or reject without even realizing you are doing it. Let me give you a very concrete, very real, very relatable example. Think of a 42-year-old woman. Let's call her Mrs. Sarah Miller. She is hard-working, honest, and God-fearing. She goes to church every Sunday, participates in the prayer group, and is always willing to help others. But deep down, Mrs. Miller carries a belief she has never said out loud to anyone, that people like her don't deserve prosperity, that wealth is for those born in a different social class than hers, that if she asks God for too much, she will seem ambitious. That humility is synonymous with living in need. This belief isn't written anywhere, but it is engraved in her soul. And every day, without realizing it, she sabotages the opportunities that arrive. She turns down the promotion because she thinks she'll look greedy. She doesn't expand her small business because she's afraid of it going wrong. She accepts relationships that diminish her because deep down she believes she doesn't deserve more than that. That is Mrs. Miller. But do you know what is more revealing? When I describe Mrs. Miller, most people watching this video think of a name, the name of someone they know. Or, if they are honest with themselves, they recognize a piece of themselves in this story. Because limited identity doesn't choose an address, it doesn't choose a social class, it doesn't choose a religion. It lives inside brilliant, capable people, loved by God, who simply were never taught to see themselves the way God sees them. And this is exactly the central point of this message. God is not far from you. God is not punishing you. God is not waiting for you to become perfect to bless you. The problem is not with God. The problem is in how you see yourself. And as long as you see yourself as smaller than God made you, you will continue to receive less than God has prepared. Let's go deeper into the root cause of this. And here is where science and spirituality meet in a way that will impress you. Modern neuroscience has discovered something called neural plasticity. In simple language, the brain is moldable. It can be rewritten. The beliefs you carry today are not permanent. They were formed throughout your life, mainly in your early years, by the environments you lived in, by the words you heard, by the experiences that marked your heart. A child who grew up hearing that money is the root of all evil will reach age 40 with a broken relationship with prosperity. A person who grew up in a home where love was conditioned on performance will reach adulthood unable to receive unconditional love, neither from God nor from people. This is not destiny, it is formation. And what was formed can be reformed. The Bible knew this long before neuroscience. Romans 12:2 says with crystal clarity, "And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Renewing of the mind, not of the situation, not of the circumstances, of the mind, of the way you process reality. This is the key. And it starts from the inside out, never from the outside in. Now pay attention, because what I'm about to say now is the heart of everything. Have you ever gone through moments where you prayed with all the faith you had, and it seemed like heaven was closed? Have you fasted, cried out before God, asked with a broken heart, and the answer didn't seem to come? Have you felt invisible before that which you believe in most? This apparent silence is not abandonment. It is positioning. God was not absent in those moments. He was preparing you for a level of understanding that you were not yet ready to receive. And today, with this video, you are receiving the opening of that level. The vast majority of people spend their entire lives praying to change circumstances without understanding that God first wants to change the heart. Because when the heart changes, circumstances have no choice. They must align. That is why people who seem to have fewer resources sometimes have results that surprise the world. Not because they were lucky, but because they learned something that the system will never teach you, that the most important battle is not external. It is internal. And that is exactly where the sacred book comes in. That is why the Father prepared the sacred book for you, the 21 days of prosperity and alignment with God. This sacred book is not just a reading. It is a 21-day spiritual protocol that works layer by layer on the renewal of the mind that Paul spoke of in Romans. Each day presents you with a lie you believe about yourself, about God, and about what you deserve, and gives you the biblical truth that destroys that lie permanently. People who have gone through the 21 days reported changes they cannot explain with logic alone. Relationships that were dead came back to life. Businesses that were stagnant began to grow. Health that was deteriorating was restored. Not because the sacred book is magic, but because it teaches you to align yourself with what God has already placed at your disposal since before you were born. The link is in the first comment of the channel, pinned right above. This content has already suffered pressure to be taken down. They have already tried to silence this message because it contradicts the narrative of the system that wants to keep you small, dependent, and misaligned. Access it now. Comment here. I am chosen and I will download the digital book. This is your publicly declared act of faith. Now that you have decided to act, the next truth I am going to tell you will be the final blow against the pattern of repetition that makes you always return to the same place, even when everything seems to be changing. Have you noticed how certain situations in your life repeat themselves? You leave a difficult relationship and enter another one that has the same problems with a different face. You get a better job, earn more, but at the end of the month, the financial situation still tightens in the same way. You resolve a family crisis and shortly after another one arises out of nowhere. This is not bad luck. This is not spiritual persecution, at least not in the sense that most people imagine. This is a pattern, and patterns have roots. Psychologists call this repetition compulsion, a phenomenon where the subconscious mind recreates familiar situations because the familiar, even if painful, is perceived as safe. The unknown, even if it is the best thing that ever happened to you, activates internal alarms that make you sabotage the good before it fully settles in. In spiritual language, this is called the back to Egypt spirit. The Bible narrates how the Israelites, after being freed from slavery, felt nostalgic for Egypt. Not because Egypt was good, but because it was familiar. Freedom scared them more than the chains. You are free, but you are running back to Egypt every time freedom starts to become real. This happens with money. You start to prosper and automatically sabotage it, spend it all at once, get involved in a debt, make a choice that undoes what was being built. This happens with love. When someone truly healthy appears in your life, you find it strange, you get suspicious, you create unnecessary fights, or you simply run away, because healthy love seems too strange compared to everything you've lived through. This happens with health, with peace, with opportunities. Every time something good begins to consolidate, an automatic, unconscious behavior arises that takes you back to the level you consider your normal, and this normal needs to be broken. Not by willpower, which is too weak for this level of battle, but by the deep renewal of what you believe about who you are. Now, I am going to tell you something that very few pastors, coaches, or therapists have the courage to say clearly. Most of the problems you face today did not start with you. They started before you. The science of epigenetics, one of the most fascinating fields of modern biology, has discovered that traumas, emotional patterns, and even beliefs can be genetically transmitted for up to 3 generations. Researchers at Harvard University and other research centers around the world have documented how children and grandchildren of people who lived through severe trauma, wars, devastating losses, or extreme poverty carry biological markers that predispose them to feel the same level of threat their ancestors felt, even without ever having lived through those situations. The Bible spoke about this millennia ago. Exodus 25 mentions that the iniquity of the fathers can visit the children to the 3rd and 4th generation. This is not divine punishment. It is a description of a principle of transmission, both biological and spiritual. And since everything that can be transmitted can also be interrupted, There is an inheritance you can return and an inheritance you can begin to build. You can be the turning point of your lineage, not the continuator of the patterns that were handed to you, but the circuit breaker, the one who said, "This far. In my generation, this stops. My children will inherit something different." This is one of the most powerful decisions a human being can make, and it starts exactly where you are now. I'm going to pause here for a moment because I need to speak directly to you. If you have reached this point in the video, it was not by chance. Most people give up in the first few minutes. Those who stay are those who are genuinely seeking a real transformation, not superficial advice, not fake motivation, but a true change that goes from the deepest part of the soul to the visible reality of daily life. You are that person, and that is why this message reached you. Think with me. How many years have you been carrying the same weight? How many times have you tried to change alone and life went back to the same point? How many prayers were made on your knees with a broken heart without the answer appearing to come? What is missing is not more effort. What is missing is alignment, and true alignment happens when you learn the spiritual laws that govern the field where you live, not just the visible circumstances, but the invisible field where everything you experience originates. That is why the Father prepared the sacred book for you, the 21 Days of Prosperity and Alignment with God. This sacred book is not just a reading. It is the practical answer to what you just heard. It specifically teaches how to identify and break the repetition patterns that make you always return to the same place. How to interrupt the negative inheritance of your lineage and begin to build an inheritance of blessing. How to reprogram the mind that Paul spoke of in Romans 12:2. Not in theory, but in 21 concrete steps, applicable in real life, in the life of someone who works, has a family, has debts, has dreams kept in the back of their heart waiting for a way out. Each day of the sacred book was built on deep biblical truths combined with the principles that neuroscience and epigenetics are discovering now, which means you won't just receive faith, you will receive understanding. And faith with understanding is a force that no circumstance can stop. The link is in the first comment of the channel, pinned right at the top. This content has already suffered pressure to be removed. They have already tried to silence this message because it goes against the narrative of the system that wants to keep you in the cycle, that wants you to remain dependent, that wants you to keep thinking the problem is a lack of luck or a lack of merit. Access it now. Comment here. I am chosen and I will download the digital book. This comment is your landmark, the line that separates the before and the after of your story. Now that you have decided to act, the next truth I am going to tell you will be the final blow against the greatest spiritual trap that is active in the life of those who are about to enter a new season. The trap that makes you give up exactly at the hour when the breakthrough was arriving. There is a moment in the journey of anyone seeking real change where everything gets worse before it gets better. And this moment has a very specific name. It is the moment of the test. Not God's test to destroy you. The test that shows if you truly believe what you declared you believe. The test that reveals if your faith is one of convenience or conviction. The Bible is full of these moments. Joseph went through them. David went through them. Job went through them. Abraham went through them. Each of these characters, at a critical moment in their journey, faced a situation that seemed to be the direct denial of everything God had promised. For Joseph it was prison. For David it was persecution by the king he served with loyalty. For Abraham it was the request to sacrifice the son who represented the entire promise. For Job it was losing absolutely everything he had built. And in all cases, the breakthrough did not come before the test, it came through it. It is fundamental that you understand this, because when life tightens, when the bills add up to more than the salary, when the relationship seems to be at its limit, when health shows warning signs, when discouragement hits at 3 in the morning and seems to have no end, the natural tendency is to interpret this as proof that God is not listening, that change is not coming, that you have been abandoned. But what if it is exactly the opposite? What if this moment of maximum pressure is the sign that the breakthrough is closer than ever? What if the darkness you are feeling is the last layer before dawn? The farmer who plants a seed sees nothing happen for weeks. The field stays quiet. The earth gives no visible sign of anything. But under the ground, in the darkness, The seed is going through the most transformative process of its existence. It is dying to itself to become something completely different, something bigger, something with roots, something capable of feeding many. You are in that process now. And the only difference between those who cross over and those who give up is the decision not to interpret the darkness as absence, but as preparation. Let's talk now about something very few people have the courage to address honestly: the role of the people around you in what you are or are not managing to achieve. Have you noticed how some people, even being close, even being family, have the involuntary gift of withering your dreams? Not necessarily out of malice, sometimes out of genuine but misguided care. With the famous, "I only want what's best for you," followed by a list of reasons why your idea won't work. Social science calls this emotional contagion. We are deeply influenced by the emotions and beliefs of the people we spend the most time with. Research shows that a person's 5 most frequent relationships have a direct impact on their income, their mental health, and their level of goal achievement. And biblical wisdom already taught this when it said that bad company corrupts good character, when Proverbs instructs us to choose those who walk beside us with wisdom. When Jesus himself selected the 12 with intention and was discerning about who he spent the most important moments of his journey with. This is not spiritual elitism, it is discernment. It is recognizing that you cannot fly like an eagle if you continue spending all your time with those who prefer the ground. And here comes one of the most important questions you can ask yourself today. Who is speaking into your life? Which voices are you letting build or destroy what God is planting in your heart? Which relationships elevate you toward what you were called to be? And which ones pull you back to what you were conditioned to accept? This discernment won't arrive overnight, but it starts with the decision to take seriously what God placed in your heart. It starts with the willingness to act, even if the people around you don't understand. It starts with the courage to be different in the name of a destiny that you cannot yet show anyone, because it is still forming inside you. Now I'm going to tell you about the law of the out-of-season harvest, one of the least taught and most powerful spiritual principles that exist. In natural life, there is an order. You plant in the spring, you harvest in the autumn. There is a predictable cycle. But in spiritual life, God frequently operates outside the expected cycle. He sends the harvest in the winter. He opens doors when all circumstances say the door should be closed. He prepares a table in the presence of enemies, not after the enemies have gone, but in their presence. In the middle of adversity, this is what supernatural grace means. Not the absence of difficulty, but the operation of God within and through difficulty in ways that defy any human calculation. And to receive this operation, a specific posture is necessary. It is not the posture of despair, it is not the posture of passivity, it is the posture of active expectation. It is waking up every day with the certainty that God is working even if you don't see it, and acting in accordance with that certainty, even when your feelings are screaming the opposite. Active expectation means praying and continuing to work, declaring and continuing to move, believing and continuing to make decisions aligned with what you believe, not with what the situation is showing. That is the faith that moves mountains, not Sunday faith, Monday faith, the faith that continues behind the scenes when no one is applauding. Let's go now to something that will completely reorganize the way you understand prayer. Most people were taught to pray from a position of lack, from the position of someone who needs to convince God to do something he hasn't yet decided to do. Lord, please help me. Lord, please don't abandon me. Lord, please give me this. This structure of prayer starts from a wrong premise, that God hasn't yet decided to bless you, that you first need to deserve it, first qualify, first fulfill a list of requirements. But this directly contradicts what is written in Ephesians 1:3, which says that God has already blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ. Already. Past perfect. Not will bless. He has blessed. The prayer that moves results is not the prayer of the beggar. It is the prayer of the heir. It is the posture of someone talking to the Father about what already belongs to them by inheritance, and declaring and acting in accordance with that inheritance. This is not arrogance. It is a correct understanding of your position in Christ. When you change the posture of prayer, you change the field from which you are operating. and the field changes everything. You have made it this far, and I need to be completely honest with you at this moment. Everything you heard in this video, double-mindedness, limited identity, repetition patterns, spiritual and epigenetic inheritance, the moment of the test, the law of out-of-season harvest, the heir's posture in prayer, all these truths are pieces of a map, and a map without a path leads nowhere. Knowing you have a limited identity without having a process to transform that identity is like knowing you have a medical problem, but not taking the treatment. Diagnosis without a cure serves no purpose other than to distress you. That is why what I'm going to present to you now is not just more content for you to consume and forget. It is a tool, a real process, with a beginning, middle, and end, with practical instructions for each day, with deep biblical truths that will remove, layer by layer, everything that stands between you and what God has already prepared for your life. Let me tell you what happens in the life of someone who goes through the 21 days with real commitment. Week 1. You begin to recognize the patterns. The limiting beliefs get names. You stop being a victim of your automatic reactions because you begin to understand them. This week is uncomfortable, but it is the discomfort of growth, not defeat. Week 2. The renewal begins. Daily declarations begin to create new neural pathways, exactly as neuroscience describes. Biblical truths begin to replace the lies that were installed over decades. You begin to see yourself differently, not with eyes of vanity, but with the eyes of someone who is beginning to see themselves as God sees them. Week 3. The alignment begins to produce visible results. Not because the sacred book is magic, but because when the interior reorganizes, the exterior has no choice but to respond. Relationships change tone. Decisions become clearer. Opportunities that were passing by invisibly begin to appear. Peace begins to inhabit places in your life where before there was only anxiety and confusion. And this is not an empty promise. It is the testimony of real ordinary people who decided to stop waiting for life to change on its own and started working from the inside out. A 58-year-old lady in Phoenix who had been in a cycle of debt for 12 years that seemed impossible to break. After the 21 days, she identified the belief that kept her in the cycle, made 3 practical decisions she had never had the courage to make before, and today she and her children are living in their own home, not because money fell from the sky, because she finally removed the internal block that prevented the solutions from arriving. A 47-year-old man in Charlotte who lived in a marriage that had become a coexistence without love. There was no cheating, there were no constant fights, there was just a void. He and his wife lived like polite roommates. After the 21 days, he had a conversation with his wife that he hadn't had in 15 years of marriage. Today, both described the relationship as having a fresh start. A 39-year-old woman in Austin who had given up on the dream of having her own business after 2 failed attempts. The sacred book helped her identify that the previous failure wasn't a lack of ability. It was an excess of fear disguised as realism. Today, she has her own business that supports her family. These are not extraordinary cases. These are cases of ordinary people who made an extraordinary decision, the decision to stop repeating the same patterns and start living what God had always promised. And now it's your turn. That is why the Father prepared the sacred book for you, the 21 days of prosperity and alignment with God. This sacred book is not just a reading. It is the process that integrates everything you heard today into concrete and progressive action. Each of the 21 days gives you a specific truth, a declaration that will rewrite what you believe about yourself, and an action step that will move you, millimeter by millimeter, out of the patterns that keep you stuck. It works specifically with the double-mindedness that separates you from your blessings, with the limited identity that makes you accept less than God prepared, with the repetition patterns that make you always return to the same point, with the spiritual and epigenetic inheritance that was passed to you without you asking for it, with the fear of the harvest that makes you sabotage the good when it finally arrives, with the posture of begging in prayer that keeps you operating below your position in Christ. This sacred book was not built for those who want to feel good for a day. It was built for those who want a transformation that lasts for the rest of their lives. And access is within your reach now. The link is in the first comment of the channel, pinned right above this video. This content has already generated reactions from structures that have no interest in seeing you grow. They have already tried to silence this message because it contradicts the narrative of the system that benefits from your stagnation, that profits from your debt, that needs your dependence to exist. The message is still here, but access could change. Access it now, at this exact moment. And comment below, "I am chosen and I will download the digital book." This comment is not a formality, it is a declaration. It is you saying publicly that you decided to act, that the message arrived, that the season of carrying the same weight has ended. I will read the comments. And every public declaration has a spiritual weight that a silent declaration does not have. The Bible says that with the heart one believes unto righteousness, but with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Say it out loud. Write it below. Declare it. Now that you have decided to act, the next truth I'm going to tell you will be the final blow against the last enemy of your transformation, the one that always appears when you are about to cross the line and fully enter into what God has prepared. This last enemy has a simple name, the rush to harvest without having planted deep enough. Real transformation has roots, and roots need time, darkness, and pressure to go deep. A bamboo tree takes 5 years to appear above the ground, but when it appears, it grows 12 inches a day, because it spent 5 years developing roots capable of sustaining what was coming. You are in that root process now. And the most common mistake people make at this point is giving up in the 5th year, convinced that nothing is growing because they can't see anything yet. Don't give up in the 5th year. The 6th year is yours. You have reached the end of this video, but your journey is just beginning. Everything you heard today was a preparation, an opening, an invitation. The message reached you because your time has come. Not the world's time, not the circumstances' time, but God's time for your life. And every time God's time arrives, it comes accompanied by a choice. Not the choice to wait for things to change on their own. Not the choice to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. The choice to act with faith, to move in the direction of what was promised, to plant even when the soil seems arid. This is your choice now. That is why the Father prepared the sacred book for you, the 21 days of prosperity and alignment with God. This sacred book is not just a reading. It is the next concrete step in the direction of what God prepared for you. It is the tool that will consolidate everything you heard today into real, lived, felt transformation, witnessed in your life and in the lives of those around you. Access the link in the first comment of the channel now. This content has already suffered pressure to be silenced. They have already tried to remove this message because it is bothersome. It remains here for a purpose, and that purpose includes you. Comment now. I am chosen and I will download the digital book. And before closing this video, do this. Give it a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell, because we have much more to reveal. Every video on this channel is a layer of the same truth, that you were created for more, called for more, and equipped by God to receive more than what circumstances insist on showing you. Don't give up. Don't retreat. Don't interpret the silence as absence. God saw you reach the end of this video, and that is already an answer. Now it's up to you.